This is Dan Ferrisi, editor with Sound and Communications Magazine. Happy to be joined this afternoon by Jon Ackerman, who is Communications Director and Solutions Advocate with Mankin Media Systems. Thanks so much for joining me, Jon.
Hey, Dan, it's great to be with you today, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So obviously the topic of conversation, as one might imagine, is the COVID-19 pandemic and how it's affecting the commercial AV industry. The effect, I think it's fair to say, has been dramatic, not just in our industry, but across the economy in global situations and in the US specifically. One of the trends we've kind of put our finger on is this drive-in experience, I guess you would say, trend coming back to fruition. Not necessarily drive-through theaters, although that's part of it, but also drive-in worship services, drive-in concerts. So what are you seeing in that regard? Is the drive-in experience coming back or not so much?
Yeah, I think that right now, organizations across the board who are either event-based or house of worship, they are trying desperately and with good reason to try to continue to reach out to people in new ways, right? You know, the concept of a drive-in movie is not new, but the concept of a drive-in worship service is semi-new. And actually, way back when, the Crystal Cathedral, that's how they started. They had a giant PA outside, and people drove up, and there was this platform that the pastor spoke from. And this is just starting to come back around because of COVID. And so I think it's a great way to diversify yourself, to be able to make sure that you are getting your message out or your event out to as many people as possible. I think it's a really great option for people that maybe won't come into your building, but would sit in a parking lot. I think it also gives, for the people attending, a sense of community, which is what a lot of houses of worship are desperately missing right now, right? They're streaming online, but is a very one-way kind of communication tool. And even though you may not be sitting in a seat or a theater seat or a pew next to somebody else who's also attending, you can look to your left and to your right and be able to understand that you're part of something together. I think that's a draw of houses of worship and concerts, especially. You're doing something together with other people. There's a sense of community. And so churches, synagogues, mosques, all these people that are trying to do these outdoor worship services or outdoor concerts are, they're doing a great thing because they're still trying to serve their community. It's a technological conundrum though in some parts, because you got to be within the letter of the law, right? The FCC has really strict guidelines on what you can broadcast. You know, as the temperatures increase, especially across the South, even here, I'm in Michigan, and it's supposed to be mid-90s all week. The idea of sitting in your car with the AC on, you know, tuning your radio and trying to participate, it creates some barriers. And so I think this is probably phase one of everything. I think phase two is going to come out where there's going to be some nuances to that outdoor experience that like churches and houses of worship and concerts are going to have to try to figure out how to overcome.
I think it's fair to say that Mankin has proven itself over time to be a very innovative kind of integrator, a forward-thinking kind of integrator. For example, your Guardian services, something that's really outside the box and that not many other integrators have to the same extent or to the same kind of a build-out. So in terms of avoiding complacency, avoiding stagnancy at a time when our industry really cannot afford to be that way, what proactive steps has Mankin taken to build out, whether it's new technological capabilities, new vertical markets you're looking at, or any other way that you're adapting to make sure it's not just business as usual at a time when clearly business is not just as usual?
Yeah, I think we as human beings have a natural tendency to, when there's a lot of stress, to just maintain and protect our little domain. And I think this is actually a great opportunity right now to really, we as integrators, to really investigate what practices and procedures we have in place to try to make them as efficient as possible. I know for us, we're looking at everything as a new opportunity. So we'll have a conversation with somebody about they're starting to open up, but they're tired of, you know, texting or using an IM like Slack or Microsoft Teams to get a hold of teams at different campuses or different locations. And so we're looking at that as an opportunity as an integrator and part of our Guardian by Mankin managed services to be able to step into that conversation and say, hey, we've done this a bunch of times. We can create a way that it's a operational expenditure instead of a capital expenditure, because a lot of places right now, the idea of spending capital money on a technology investment, it's a non-starter, right? Like there's no way. But if there's something that can help their teams communicate more effectively, produce content more efficiently, whatever that is, they'll enter into that conversation. And so we're looking at all of our managed services and trying to find out if there's a way that we can tweak them or add to our services. And so we're looking at those communication tools. We're looking at those evaluation tools, trying to figure out how do we ensure that they're the very, very best for our clients. And we're also looking at ourselves and saying, okay, what do we need to do to give our clients help our clients solve the very next problem that they're experiencing? And so there's a lot of those conversations. As far as new markets, it is the wild, wild west out there for every market. And I for one, am hesitant to say, yeah, there's this new market we're going after where even in our existing vertical markets, we're like, oh my gosh, there are so many new problems that we never had to foresee. How do we solve these problems for our clients? How do we come alongside and partner with them? And so I'm having a hard time even looking at new markets because we've got so many new complex problems in our existing ones.
In light of all those new complex problems, and obviously there's going to probably be continued evolution in those problems because the pandemic is not over and the situation is still changing rapidly. What is your level of confidence, looking not just at Mankin, but at your fellow integrators in your region, across the country, across the world? What is your level of confidence that our industry will be able to rise to this challenge and essentially come out as strong as we were, if not stronger, on the other end? Are you seeing that innovative mindset, that client-focused mindset, that communications-minded mindset that's going to get us to where we need to be? Or do you feel like we're still kind of battling against a certain inertia?
Yeah, I think there's definitely that inertia that's causing a lot of integrators, friends of mine that I've talked with about how do they overcome and how do they survive, right? I think that's at everybody's mindset. Even in my own household, we're trying to figure out what do we need to do to prepare or weather whatever's coming because it's so uncertain. I do think that there are integrators out there that are just knocking it out of the park. And I'm constantly amazed at what both friends and competitors are doing out there in the market to really innovate themselves. I think there's a certain part of the segment that was highly reliant on events and conferences. And I think that those folks, they're just having to evaluate, do they want to try to continue to gobble up or go after what little event or conference is out there, or do they have to innovate and come back to maybe their roots and they've maybe expanded too far and need to come back? I think that our industry is some of the most genuine, savvy, problem-solving people because of the nature of our businesses. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of integrators come through this just being rip-roaring ready to go for whatever comes next, because they will have done the hard work and investigated inside of their companies what they need to do to weather the storm.
I certainly hope that that's the case. And I feel like it probably will be. I think that the point you touched on earlier about shifting a bit from capital expenditures to operational expenditures, things like Guardian services and the whole range of managed services and AV as a services, I think will be essential moving forward. I think that's definitely where the industry is going. Knowing that you're on the vanguard of that puts you in a strong position, but I think that's where everyone probably should be going at this point.
Yeah. I mean, even though we started it 3 years ago, it just means we've figured out all the mistakes and have that we've made and have kind of learned from those and have adapted and changed our policies and our procedures. And even the gear stack, we're learning that different clients require different things. And so when we approach a client about a managed service or shifting what they're doing, we're really focused on what's the mission of their organization and how do we come alongside that to help them further it. We would love nothing more than for the technology that we help facilitate to fade into the background and their staff and their volunteers or whatever their mission and vision and values are to really be pushed to the forefront. We just happen to think that managed services as a whole is one of those key areas that is going to help them do that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, Jon. I really do appreciate your insights, as I'm sure our integrator, consultant, design engineer readers do. So thank you once again for joining us. This has been Dan Ferrisi, editor with Sound and Communications Magazine. Happy to have been joined this afternoon by Jon Ackerman, communications director and solutions advocate with Mankin Media Systems. Thanks again, stay safe, and talk to you soon.